Hey everyone, it's Lexie. So in today's video I'll be sharing with you all the books that I ended up reading in the month of January. So I read a total of 5 books this month, which I'm pretty pleased of. I feel like because especially one book was really long and it took me a while to get through. I was like, oh, I must have read like maybe like 3 books, but I actually did a pretty good job, and all of them I gave 4 out of 5 stars. So I think that is a pretty good start to kind of a new reading year, and they're kind of all over in terms of genre, which is really exciting as well. So without further ado, let's get started. So first up I have The Subtle Knife and the Amber Spyglass by Philip Pullman, and this is book 2 and 3 in the His Dark Materials trilogy. And I read this series for the first time and I really enjoyed it. I think like book 2 is definitely where you get this shift of kind of, it becomes more mature and you get more kind of darker themes introduced to kind of these characters and just overall as well. And I will say I think this is a very overall like a mature YA fantasy series, especially with the ending. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I feel like especially with a lot of kind of modern YA, I feel like it is always a happy ending, and I feel like in this case it was a very kind of realistic, mature adult ending, which I really appreciated. I thought it was just really well written and I really enjoyed it. And I didn't understand a lot of the religious kind of allegory in here. I know it plays like a very important part of this series, and I still didn't know a lot about it, so I was still able to enjoy it even though I didn't understand a lot of the religious undertones and themes in here. I inspired my boyfriend to reread this as well, and he says like he was explaining kind of the religious side of this. I was like, man, it was like we read two completely different stories. So even if you aren't well versed in kind of biblical tales and folklore, then I think you can still really enjoy this even though you may not understand a lot of like the meaning behind it and like what it's being inspired by. But yeah, like I said, book 2 and 3 I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it was just a really fun fantasy read, and I am excited to try the spin-off series as well. My boyfriend has read the first 2 books in the new, or like the ones that are currently out right now. And he said they were pretty good. I think one is like around the time Lyra is born, and the second one is like after the events of this trilogy, so I'm very interested to see. But overall I love this series. I think it's a really good standout YA series. It doesn't write down to the reader. Like even as adults I was able to kind of read it and enjoy it, and just seeing Lyra's growth throughout the whole thing was really just a lot of fun to see. Sorry, my camera battery is gonna die, so I had to like move around position of the camera so it can be plugged in while I'm filming it. But for those of you who don't know, the His Dark Materials series takes place in a parallel kind of Oxford, where we follow a girl named Lyra who lives in this world where they have demons, which are kind of animal reincarnations of their soul. So in our world they say like our soul is inside of us, but in this world their soul is like this animal counterpart. And so she kind of ends up getting thrown into this kind of scenario where there is kind of a expedition to find dust, which they say is something that connects the 2 worlds together, and she kind of gets thrown into the midst of it, and she kind of goes off from there. So I feel like this is a very standard like YA well-loved series, and I can see why. I just never read it as a kid, but I will say, like I said, as an adult it holds up pretty well to kind of reading it kind of past the demographic that it's kind of aged towards. But yeah, like I said, overall this was a really good trilogy, and like I said, can't wait to start the next one. Next up I read Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr, and I was really excited for this. I know like the reviews of this have been kind of mixed. I feel like this is a book that you either love it or hate it, and I can see where people can be kind of iffy about this book, but it follows multiple different perspectives throughout human history and also in our future as well. So we get 2 protagonists, or 2 point of views kind of during the 1400s. We get 2 during 2020, and then 1 in the future as well. And what connects these multiple different storylines together is a common book called Cloud Cuckoo Land. And so we can follow follow this book's kind of path throughout history and how it's impacted people in many different ways, and how books basically kind of connect us through different points in time. And I did really find that theme to be really like interesting, just exploring the impact that books have on our lives, and especially ones that have been around for centuries. I think it is very interesting to kind of look into that. But yeah, like I said, I can see where this can be very polarizing, because although I did really like the first few hundred pages were really interesting, just you get introduced to these different characters and the worlds that they live in, and ultimately how they are connected to this book. But I did find the middle part to be very boring. I felt like it had like a big pacing issue, and I felt like a good half chunk of this book could have been edited out. I felt like it didn't really add much to the story, but I did really love how the different stories were connected at the end, like how they were all like intertwined with these different point of views and throughout time. Like I did really like how everything was connected. But like I said, I think it did suffer from some pacing issues. I thought it was really well written, but I think it could have been maybe like 150 pages shorter. But yeah, like I said, overall I think this is a book that people either will really love or really hate. I think it's basically, like I said, it highlights the power of books and the longevity of books, and how it is humans that keep the memory of like stories and novels alive. And I think that's a really interesting theme to explore throughout, human history. But I think it's best for this one to kind of go into it not knowing too much. I think it's just best to kind of dive right in and see if it is something for you. And like I said, I've heard people say they didn't really enjoy this. My boyfriend read this as well after I read it, and he said he felt like the same way. He liked how the stories were connected at the end and how everything wrapped up, but he thinks, again, it could have been a little bit shorter, because like I said, for like 100 to 150 pages in the middle, like not really a lot happens. But yeah, I think this is one that you just need to kind of dive right in and experience for yourself, because I think it's, like I said, depending on like what you like when you read, I think, it's hit or miss. I think it was a hit for me. I did really enjoy it. I did have a few kind of issues with it in regards to pacing, and I felt like some of the narrations were a little bit boring, but I did really like how everything wrapped up. And I didn't like this as much as The Light We Cannot See. I don't think you could ever top kind of that masterpiece, but I still think this is a really good kind of follow-up for this author, something different, something unique, and definitely something that is a standout. I think this will be a standout forever on my shelf, just because of how unique of a premise it was. Just, yeah, like I said, I think this is a book that everyone at least needs to, try to experience at least once in their life. And lastly, the last two books that I read this month were part of my Recieve and I series Reread that I'm kind of planning on doing. So for basically up until the new release comes out in July, I have to reread 2 books per month in order to be caught up with the newest book, because it's been, I think the newest book, besides the one coming out, like the newest release was in 2017, and I started reading the series in high school, so a lot of the details, I even remember when I read the new book in 2017, like I just didn't remember a lot of the details. So this time around I'm rereading it and taking notes to make it easier on myself, so I don't have to reread like a 12 book series if the next one comes out. So the first 2 books are The Surgeon and The Apprentice by Tess Gerritsen. I feel like these 2 are the ones that I remember the most, because I think it is a very, especially in The Surgeon, I feel like the ending is very iconic. And if you are familiar with the TV series, it like finished a couple years ago, but me and my sister really love that series as well. It's very different. I feel like the TV show is very much, the characters are more likable, and it's a little bit more happy-go-lucky. It does have some serious themes in it, obviously dealing with murder, but I feel like they kind of add more comedy to it. This kind of book series is very dark, and the first one actually doesn't, you don't really get a lot of Rizzoli in this one, and I feel like we kind of get more of character development in The Apprentice, and we're not even introduced to Dr. Isles until this one, very briefly. But yeah, I feel like these books so far, I gave both these a 4 out of 5 stars. I feel like they hold up well to my memory of reading them when I was like 15, and so for 12 years I feel like they hold up really well, and I think it's because it is also written for an adult audience. And I find, like, especially if you read books that you read as a kid that are kind of written for that age demographic, it's hard to kind of revisit them as adult just because you're not used to reading at that level anymore. But I feel like this holds up well to my memory of it. Like I said, you can see these books are well loved with the spine. Like, I read them, my sister read them, so yeah, it was just also really nostalgic to revisiting these. Like, this was the series that really kind of got me obsessed with reading. Like, I would finish the book on Friday and my mom would pick me up from school and we'd walk into town and I'd get the next book of the series, and this provided me with a distraction. I had some health issues going on and this series kind of provided me with a distraction. Like, I always looked forward to reading this, or I'd bring these books around with me and read a few minutes just before class started. So these books hold a lot of, you know, near and dear memories. But yeah, basically the premise of the first one is that there's these string of murders taking place where these women are being found kind of mutilated with kind of their female organs removed, and so these string of murders are being called by, like, the surgeon is the murderer, and kind of goes off from there. And the Apprentice is kind of like a part 2 to the surgeon. It's basically like, this is how the surgeon gets captured, and then this is Rizzoli dealing with the aftermath of that. And then also there are strings of murders taking place that are eerily similar to the surgeon, and like specific details that kind of show that there's something off about this, like there's something wrong about this. And like I said, it holds up well. These are probably the ones that I remember the most, just because I think, especially like I said, the ending, it's very iconic. And even if you've watched the TV show, I think like the pilot episode is loosely based off of these two books, so I kind of am more familiar with the storyline. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think they hold up well. They're a little bit, you can tell they're a little bit dated just because they'll mention like pagers and like stuff like this. I think this is like, yeah, 2001. So they're a little bit older, but I think they hold up well. If you're looking to kind of get into a new series that has been around for a while, I highly recommend this one. Like I said, it holds up well to the test of time. It's been 12 years since I've read these and I love them just as much. Like I said, there are like bits and pieces of the other books that I remember, but for the most part it'll be like rereading them for the first time because it's been so long. But yeah, like I said, these are like a solid, you know, crime series, and if you're looking for something new to start, I recommend this one. So that's it, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what books you read this month and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.